And now, lastly, in today's episode, it was Monday of this week that Battleground Mayor Eric Overholser signed two maybe somewhat controversial proclamations regarding immigration and customs enforcement and Antifa, establishing the city basically as a supporter of federal immigration enforcement and a critic of these anti fascist organizations. So the proclamation said in part, and I'll read this to you so I don't get it wrong. The city officially recognizes a federal executive designation of Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization, making it one of the first municipalities to do so. So, what was interesting is during that very meeting, which was packed, by the way, and the mayor told me today he thinks probably the most packed city council meeting that since he's been mayor, the attendance was greater than he's seen before. There were some members of Antifa initially just kind of standing in the back of the room. You can tell they're Antifa by what they're wearing. Often their faces are covered, they're all in black, often some head coverings. They stood in the back of the room. Well, once he started reading the proclamation about Antifa, some folks in that back of the room started flipping out. And one of those interrupters ended up being dragged out by police and eventually arrested. So it was interesting to watch. After a couple of those people were pulled out of the room by police, that I was watching the meeting and there was uproarious applause from the majority of folks who were attending that meeting. So clearly, at least the majority of folks that were at the meeting on Monday in Battleground were in support of the mayor's proclamation against Antifa and in support of ICE. Now, the other proclamation, again, as I mentioned, was about immigration and customs enforcement. And the mayor basically said, I'm affirming support for U.S. immigration and customs enforcement and saying, secure borders and the enforcement of immigration laws are essential for public safety. So, again, in my conversation this morning with Battleground Mayor Eric Overholser, I asked him, why wade into this? Because he told me before we even started recording the interview, he's not a social media guy. He's not a guy that does a lot of media, doesn't do a lot of Zoom interviews like he granted me this morning. So I said, why put yourself out there when this is such a controversial issue? You knew that after the meeting on Monday night, when things blew up on social media, you might just want to step out of the limelight. And he explained to me why he felt this was so important to take a stand on.
I really thought it was important just to represent Battleground on these type of broad-based issues, not necessarily trying to put a focus on a federal level of recognition, but really um, Battleground is a lovely town, and the focus was to just kind of make the statement that Battleground believes in the rule of law, that we support law enforcement, that we believe in some of these things, which on the national level do have a pretty large, hot button type of issue. But here locally, I felt like it represented the majority of the constituents here in Battleground. I'm not necessarily the guy that wants the social media attention or my face on any kind of television show or anything like that. It definitely wasn't seeking um, that kind of attention. But it's just kind of goes back to representing our city well and having a pulse on our constituents and how they feel in a broad-based kind of way. And I think this represented that. And so, not necessarily do I believe fear should be a factor in that decision making. I think it's about representing the people well and allowing that to be known and representing the city in that way. So, yeah, whether it means that you're you're going to face the fire or not, I suppose that shouldn't be a factor in what we're doing to represent our citizens.
Now, the backlash continues as well as the support. The mayor told me he's got a ton of emails and phone calls from people reaching out, as well as on social media saying they support, his proclamations made on Monday. But there's also some criticism and from those in the media. And the Columbian today came out with a pretty sharp opinion piece, writing in part, The Battleground City Council is going out on a far right limb. It is issuing proclamations in favor of ICE and Christian nationalism and opposed to LGBTQ pride and Antifa, which is just a blanket term for anti mega. So the article or the opinion piece in the Columbian went on basically just criticizing the mayor for taking this approach, saying it's really not what the community wants. The mayor told me, his constituents were urging him to adopt both of these proclamations. I should note that this was not the same as a resolution that the entire city council voted in support of. This is a proclamation, and the mayor explained to me that he is entitled, if citizens in the community are urging him to come out and stake your claim on something, make it clear this is where we stand. He has the authority as mayor to issue that proclamation. So he did that on his own on Monday, although there are some other members of the city council in support of that position. So that is it for today's episode of Washington in Focus Daily for this Thursday, June the 4th. Thank you so much for watching. Please join us again for tomorrow's episode. It'll be a Friday.